We are at the fag end of the London Congress, the 4 days of technical deliberations, and the Congress really came alive yesterday with the IFA OECD session that discussed the possible approaches to tax challenges of digitalization. We started day one, the plenary one, BEPS Action Plan 4, interest deduction limitation. Day two, investment funds, but I think the more interesting panel was taxation of space. Yesterday, undoubtedly, the headline grabbing session was the one on digitalization with OECD US representatives, and today session
And
was
yesterday's
very
even
interesting.
Mukesh Bhutani's session was
Sure.
unilaterally
Unilateral treaty override.
overriding the tax.
Yeah, we
treaty.
have with us Mr. TP Ostwal of DTS Associates, renowned international tax expert based out of Mumbai, and he'll give his take. This is the 31st Congress that he is attending, and Oswalji, if we talk about today's sessions, the recent development in international taxation, you had some interesting views. I think the one line that stood out, we heard about the corporate tax residence concept, how it's undergoing a change, transparency initiatives, how the Dutch bank regulator is now looking at imposing some good practices or some more onerous responsibilities, a euphemism for it, on banks as financial intermediaries. We learned about quite a few new international tax rulings,
including the Panama leak
Panama and Paradise Papers.
Paradise paper. Everything was discussed, and
Whether you could use it,
case laws developed on that.
Fowler case in the
Yeah. There are a number of issues which are of a recent origin. Starting with the Mahindra Tech decision of the Australian court. And of course, when voting was taken, they said this decision was wrong.
Yeah, so essentially, I think one of the key arguments rejected by the Australian court, Satyam's argument rejected by the Australian court was Satyam argued in court that
Treaties cannot levy the tax.
treaties cannot levy the tax, and I think that led to a good question that was posed to everyone as a poll. You said that should treaties be exclusively for relieving purpose, tax relieving purpose?
Question is not this. Question was India had a specific law which says a treaty or the domestic law whichever is beneficial can apply, and therefore you can override the domestic law and use the treaty. And the same argument was used in Australia, and they rejected that. How can it be? It is a part of the developed countries world, and they are member of the OECD, and this principle laid down by OECD, if the developed country is not adopting, then I think some very wrong thing is going on in the Australia about this. I am not saying it is because I am an Indian and I have nothing to do with Mahindra Tech. I am not holding any shares. But the fact remains the principles laid down by the OECD should be respected. Even India respects by specific law. Why can't Australia says the interpretation of the word royalty which was used under the domestic law was applied. When we said that under the treaty the interpretation is different, he says we don't agree. And we have said that in our case we are interpreting in this manner. He says it's your problem, not our problem. So therefore I think the judges must come to India to learn what is international tax, and then they give a rulings. I think this is one setback for the country like Australia.
We also learned a lot about other recent judgments, but I think the one point on which we would want to have Mr. Oswal's take is another poll question that was asked, and the moderator of the session, Chloe Bonnet, felt that the arm's length principle is alive and well, and would apply to, is still being used for at least the Rolls-Royce cases. That's the big companies, the big corporations. But when the poll question was posed to the 2,000 delegates and the answers came, it was quite astounding. 66% of those who voted said that 10 years down the line, mechanical rules would be in vogue, would be invoked and would be in vogue, and not arm's length transactional principles.
I agree with the views. I am also one of them. Reason being simple that the change is inevitable, bound to happen. What this formulary apportionment which was going on, OECD changed their new principle, bringing theoretical discussions on the transfer pricing under the garb of arm's length. They brought in 5 different definitions of how to calculate arm's length profit. To calculate arm's length profit, 5 different methods. Now they are themselves afraid that this arm's length principle which they are talking about is not going to work in case of digital economy. And therefore they are now coming out discounted cash flow and number of all other methods, and profit split method they are talking about. But when we are talking about profit split method, today the Americans have told that it is not this profit split which will be acceptable. There should be some marketing intangibles or a marketplace. Destination-based principle should apply. Where the goods are ultimately sold, that country has some right of net profit. So that should be segregated. Then thereafter residual profit and thereafter routine profit. So all this, then this will lead to a lot of mechanical calculation. And that the American thinking, they are as such in a complex world, they are making it further complexity.
Yeah, we'll come on that as well. Oswalji, my last question, and then of course I'll ask your take on what the next 12 months hold for the tax world. One of the panelists today remarked that how much more complex will we let international tax get? I think that's a very, very, very valid question.
No, the life is going to be complex. It is not simple.
How much more?
Oh, God knows how much more complex. We have gone to only moon. Our ladder failed, but we will be successfully landing on moon again. But the question is then our ambition is, do we want to stop at moon? Answer is no, we want to go to other planets. So the desire, the jest of going other places does not stop. So similarly, as long as mankind is there, he would like to do something. Everybody want to have supremacy. So they would like to change. And the tinkering going on in this rules mechanism, there's nothing scientific, honestly speaking. Everything is tinkering, supremacy. And therefore, arm's length principle number 2 is going to come in. That is what was told in the conference. And my opinion, it is bound to come.
Yeah.
And I believe this arm's length principle today, what we are talking under the garb of the OECD and UN now following, is purely theoretical. Purely theoretical. All 5 methods cannot produce the same result. And if it is not going to produce same result, the differences are haywire, significant. How can you say these are the correct principles of mathematical principles of calculating the profit?
Final take on the Congress deliberations. Any one session, any one conversation that remained with you or that will remain with you?
I would take the third day's the session on the OECD IFA was by far the best, because there what you are talking, and I personally like the way the American representative Mr. Chip categorically threatened without showing that he is threatening. He says American planes are coming. Be on the guard, be ready. Don't do anything which is going to hurt America. Don't do all principles which are targeting American companies. It will not be acceptable. And if it is not acceptable, do you think that the digital economy, the digitization papers will be acceptable? Next year is the last day, D-Day. So therefore, America, if it does not accept, finished, you enjoy your life. Further go on holding the conferences.
Don't get spooked by what Ostwalji said. The war terminologies was only to drive home the impact, but I think he has. US has indeed drawn a red line. We'll of course get Ostwalji's take again at the Cancun Congress in Mexico 12 months from now. And if you think these discussions are almost predicting or forecasting a much more complex, complicated, full of riddled tax world, then I think 12 months from now, it's highly unlikely to be, less complicated. On that note, we will be back at the Cancun Congress with all the deliberations, just like we have at London. The 7th IFA Congress coverage brought to you exclusively by Tax Sutra. Thanks so much for your patronage. In conjunction with DTS and Associates, thank you so much, Ostwalji, for all your take. The expert takes of Ostwalji over the last 4 days, crisp 5-minute take of full day's proceedings. It's indeed been a pleasure, Ostwalji, interviewing you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.